Today is Wednesday, the 10th of June, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. So we are right into the model today. On the right hand side, we have the advisory board operating system as a model itself, but on the right hand side, we have the growth and capital, which is the predictability of any business, right? So let me show you this because I think an image will say more than 1,000 words. I would like to look into this image and I walk you through what it means. Probably self-explanatory anyway. So this is how it feels loading your boat, being your boat, your company. And this image came after, I don't know if you remember, in the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've been talking with 40 companies in the southern east coast of the US. And out of this conversation, some patterns start to come out. And we realize actually how people are feeling, particularly founders of companies that have multi-generational activities in the business, is passing a legacy from the next to the next generation. But as a founder, also, or as a multifamily generational business, the problem's still all the same. One of them is this particular image. On the left, you see the loading is kind of a blind. So you can imagine that boxes are going on, people are scrambling, the boat is tilting, and nobody seems to know where the saved limit is, right? But on the right side, the boat is balanced, measured, and calm, and there is a dashboard or a kind of guidance where the things are going and where they are going. So this image also you can translate it to your own business. Many businesses, even if they are doing business, it feels like the image on the left is like you're loading a lot of things in your business and you think are growing, but is the boat is tilting all the time, even if you are in a safe zone, which means in a currency exchange actually stable, in an economy that is relatively stable. They are calm, the waters are calm. You are in a place where your community, your environment, your networking, etc., is your safe port. Even though when you are at port, it feels that the load is tilting your boat all the time. Compared to the other companies, actually, they're looking into advisory boards and they say, well, we want something more steady, that is organized, that we know which are the next destinations, what we need to load for the next destination in the right order to offloading to. So you don't have to scramble again. So what we need to do and how to do it. And through the conversation today, I'm going to explain all these concepts because you will start to get more familiar with what's going on in the organizations, as I mentioned. But this image, remember this image about the loading, the scramble, the disorganization, compared to one to the other of these images, right? Now, so now that you have the image in your brain, let's move on to the model again, which is this. We are talking about the advisory board operating system, and today specifically we are talking about this unbalanced in terms of partnerships, revenues, and assets. That this is a growth and capital you need to make your company more predictable, right? Okay, so let's kick on. So there is a good way to think about growth. So many founders, like yourself, do not have a growth problem, right? So this is very positive. What you may have is a load problem. And and here's what I mentioned with load. You add revenue, you add clients, people, machines, contracts, products, commitments. Each one seems sensible on its own, but all together they change the risk profile of your business, right? So that's the boat that is tilting compared to the boat that is more stable. So let's take three problems with this that we find out. Problem number one is revenue quality is not being tested hard enough. So a business can grow and still become weaker if too much revenue comes from too few clients, too few sectors, poor payment terms, or work that looks impressive but damage your margins. And we've seen companies here in these 40 companies that we spoke with and we analyzed that they have high concentrations on some businesses. Like some of them are very, very high concentrated in pharma. But guess what? The products that they produce, the services that they produce, can be transferred to any other industry with just a few tweaks. So yes, it's true. You say we specialize in pharma, but actually, guess what? What you do for those particular specializations, they are not exclusive to pharma. And give you a very specific example. One company was specializing in industrial boilers, right? A boiler is a boiler. Yes, you have very specific things for pharma, but guess what other industry are using boilers? Many others. It's not exclusively for pharma. So then when you start to see this revenue concentration and the specialization allegedly in one industry or one sector, and particularly because these sectors are they don't have very well structured the way that the contract, the payment terms, etc. So then the risk profile of your company is going very high. Problem number two is that the asset base is misunderstood, and this is back to the point actually. What you specialize in some industry doesn't mean that actually it cannot be transferred to other industries. So the business owns knowledge, relationships, systems, data, machinery, content, contracts, reputation. Some of those assets are visible, right? Because actually we specialize in pharma and boilers, for example, but some are hidden. And this is where the real value stays. Some are costing money without creating enough value, because if you have a stock enough to produce 2 boilers, but you're waiting for the next contract from pharma, but the boiler mechanisms and things with a few tweaks can provide to another industry, then you have money sitting there doing nothing. So if you cannot see this hidden value clearly, you cannot manage them properly either. And that would be money on the table you are not collecting today. And this is all related also to your intellectual properties. And problem number 3 is that capital decisions are made with late information. Pretty much it's a receipt of the mess that happened, because the information is too late to when the decision is already made. By the time the finance report shows stress, the operational decision has already happened. So the quote was too cheap, for example. The payment terms were too soft. The stock was bought too early in advance. So the project was accepted with too much custom work. That's happened. So in order to gain the business, the sales teams or the consultant or the appraisal person doing the quoting sometimes giving to things that they should be, and that start to get very costly. So the hiring people for some particular projects made that these decisions are made before the role was 100% clear, and then you are stuck with people that are halfway where you need, and you have to hire again or subcontract certain parts of the work. So in other words, back to the image of loading the ship, if you do it in a hurry because every box looks like growth, for example, a new client, a new line, a new site, a new senior hire, a new piece of kit, whatever is the case, everything seems to be busy, everything is proud of them, but then the boats start to lean, and then you go as a founder and ask, why does growth feel so tight? Because you don't see that reflected in your bank accounts, because you see the money is coming in or not coming in, and you have a lot of expenditure. At the beginning, the idea was brilliant, and now you see, yeah, we are a bigger company, we have a revenue reported bigger than before, but actually you're looking under the hood and it starts to get very confusing and messy. Now, that question, I guess, deserves another kind of approach. And as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. the, use the advisory board to build predictability dashboards. Here's the thing. I say, oh, another dashboard. No, not a dashboard with 50 numbers that is the for the sake of putting more numbers in a dashboard. That becomes literally theater. I mean, a small set of numbers that tell you the truth earlier and not as a audit of the past, as a mea culpa, or as I call it, a post-mortem or a debrief. Do it for anticipation, for briefing, so pre-mortem, as I call it. So for you as a founder, you will want to see revenue concentration, gross margin by work type, cash conversion, debtor aging, quote accuracy, delivery slippage, asset use and risk exposure. So the exact measures depends on the business, but the principles stays the same. The advisory board and you should see the load before the boat tilts. See, so with all these things that I mentioned earlier, you can watch the video later on to make the list. You want to make sure that actually that boat are steady, is not tilting and balanced. This is where predictability links back to scale. As we mentioned yesterday, I talked about brand, people, and partnerships. And today, I'm digging deeper with this, where those growth channels are creating stable value or hidden pressure. You don't want a hidden pressure because you don't know where it's coming from. You want a stable value. So a partnership that brings work but destroys margin is not a strong partnership, but perhaps because you have very long ties with these partnerships, you keep them there and you never cut that relationship or put the boundaries on that relationship, but it's costing you money, it's not helping the organization. Might be a client that gives you volume, but trap cash is not a safe client. Because if they keep trapping the cash and paying in, instead of 30 days, they are paying in 69 to 120, then it's a very problematic situation. They are a good client in paper, yes, but in terms of cash flow, they are very dangerous. Or a new asset that improve capacity but weakens short-term liquidity needs a board level attention. That kind of thing. They say, well, what's going on with the cash flow, right? So the advisory board helps you as a founder move from how much did we sell to what kind of business are we building, right? So if this is not to slow you down, is to be more conscious of what's going on and how you handle this with a proper plan behind it. It also changes the emotional tone. You, as a founder, often feel embarrassed when growth creates stress. We got that. I didn't get this line from myself. It's actually, this is talking to people, to real owners or family owners of businesses. Sometimes they feel like I say, I'm feeling embarrassed because I should do better. But you think it means you have done something wrong. But I would label that differently. You haven't done something wrong because you don't have the capacity. You're too busy. You are too into the business 24/7. You don't have more hours per day. You don't have more days in a week. So it sounds more like the business has outgrown your old way of reading the numbers. Also, it seems like you have enough data, but not enough signals, right? So what do you do with all this data? You need to start to put signals there to understand what the data means or how to translate into business outcomes. So also might feel like a company is successful, which is very good, but the load is not evenly spread, right? So everything is like a big funnel down to you all the time. So then you can do as much as you can do. There's nothing else that humanly possible can be done there. So those are all solvable problems when they are visible. And then you have people that help you to clarify that vision. And as a good friend of mine used to say, this is a leadership fog, because you are walking through the fog and you are seeing what you can see as far as you can see, because all the rest is blurred by the fog. Now, so what do you gain working with me? So it's three things: business outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of outcomes, it's a clear decision making. You see which growth strength the business and which growth make it heavier. So in terms of differentiators, the advisory board flexibility. And this is, instead of hiring one finance strategy or operation executive and expecting them to cover every angle, I bring an international mix of advisory board members around the current growth challenge in your organization. It is faster than hiring one executive, is a lower overhead than a big consulting firm, and there is no talent locked in because members can be swapped every 6 months. And we talk about this, I think that yesterday, when we talk about the people, actually, you might have very good lawyers, very good accountants, consultants, industry experts, etc., but they see a portion of the business. They don't see the business over as a whole, like the model that we have in front of us. Because today we are talking about predictability only specifically, but all this predictability also have an impact on your system, or your system have an impact on predictability, also in the edge, or which is the left side of the model, which is your transformation, your innovation, how you're going to go and be relevant for the future, or when you want to accelerate your commercial activity. So the risk reduction is better timing, right? You are not waiting for a cash squeeze, a covenant pressure, margin dip, or a customer concentration issue to become urgent. You are ready. You're ready and reading the signals earlier and deciding which with more discipline. And discipline is not a punishing word, it's more a kind of a workflow, a process, a cadence, a calendar process, etc. So this is the things that you can do way much better with an advisory board with a fraction of the cost. And now, to wrap up today, let me give you this other image. One action you can take home, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. And this is this little grill. And let me explain what you see here on the screen. This is very useful. You can take a picture and print it, or do it by yourself. And it takes 30 minutes or less to do it. Pick your top 10 revenue lines from the last quarter, right? Not just clients, but types of work. We are talking about the jobs that you've done last quarter. So next to each one, write 3 words: margin, cash, and complexity. So these are the grills that you see on the right. Now mark each as a green, amber, or red. And with that color code, if the line brings revenue but scores red on cash or complexity, that is not just a sales issue, that's a predictability issue. And you can go through all the process here very easily. And then guess what? At least you have now a starting point. You start to see what the works are bringing to you. So then you can reverse engineer, right, those particular jobs that you've done, or those particular revenue lines, and I say, what happened here that actually you have this variation of colors? All of them should be green, but when you see ambers and reds, you'll start to question, what is going on here? So how we can improve this? And guess what? Save this template and do it again next quarter based on some action point, one action point. You don't need to do many action points. Just do one action point at a time, or 2 at the most, based on the learnings of this scorecard. And what happens next quarter? You start to do the same exercise, 10 revenue lines, probably the same ones, and then you score them, and then you compare one to the other. So what happens there? Now you will start to see if the patterns are repeating or if there are improvements. If you're getting more reds into amber, then you are doing improvements. If you're getting more ambers into greens, you are getting improvements. If the things are steady, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that probably you are doing the very systemic changes that will take longer, but you have to document that in a way or how, and this is a very good card to do so. So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow we are moving into the bottom of the model, which is systems, right? This is the controls and resilience. I will look at why the road feels winding when roles, accesses, controls, and performances rules are unclear. So, and remember, if you are leading a company of 50 or more employees and more than 10 million in revenue, and you want an advisory board operating system that helps you to make growth more predictable, let's have a 30-minute chat, because I would love to understand where you're coming from, where you're today, where you are going, and how an operating advisory board, the system, as you see in the screen that we show in the model today, can help you with a fraction of the cost, with interchangeable members as you need as the project evolves, at a fraction of the cost of a consulting firm, and we can put that together in 2 weeks or less. Fantastic. Let's stop here for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, and bye-bye.